All right, so get ready for this one because today we are going to do a deep dive into making YouTube thumbnails.
Ooh.
But here's the twist.
Okay.
We're ditching the computer and doing it all on our phones.
Really? Wow. Okay.
Yep,
On your phone.
totally, just using our phones.
That's amazing.
And to guide us through this, we've got this Spanish tutorial called
Hey.
Cómo hacer miniaturas para YouTube desde tu móvil gratis, CapCut.
All right.
Now, don't worry, we're going to translate all the good stuff. We got you covered.
All right. Appreciate it.
But this is really cool because it shows how accessible content creation is getting.
Yeah.
And this tutorial actually showcases YouTubers
Okay.
who, started with really basic setups, like just their phone,
Wow.
and they still managed to find success.
Yeah, that's really inspiring.
So it really goes to show that you don't need fancy equipment to get started.
Exactly.
It's all about having good content.
It's all about that good content.
That's what matters.
Yep.
Now, speaking of good content, they use an iPhone in the tutorial.
Okay.
But, you can apply these techniques to any smartphone.
Yeah.
Camera quality isn't as big of a deal as you might think.
That's good to know.
Yeah, it's really about understanding, like, the core techniques and the principles behind it.
Right.
And the tool they use for this is actually a free app
Okay.
called CapCut,
CapCut.
which you can get on both Android and iPhone.
I've heard of that, yeah.
Perfect. All right, so
Right.
step one is snapping a good photo.
Okay. All right.
But, they really, really stress good lighting in this tutorial.
Yeah, I get.
They even suggest, like, having a front light source and then, like, additional lamps at 45-degree angles. If your camera isn't, the greatest.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? Why is lighting so important?
Well, I think good lighting, it doesn't just make your photo brighter. It really impacts, like, how professional it looks.
Right.
Like, think about when you're scrolling through, like, YouTube. The thumbnails that really pop are usually the ones that are well lit.
Yeah, they just grab your attention.
Exactly. It's like they just draw your eye.
It's like, if you're walking down a street and you see a store that's, like, dimly lit.
Right.
Versus one that has, like, these big, bright windows.
Yeah, you're going to be drawn to the one you can see clearly.
Exactly.
Yep.
All right, so you've got your photo.
Okay.
It's well lit. You're feeling good.
Mhm.
Time to head into CapCut.
Right.
Open a new project. Pick your photo.
Okay.
And then here's where it gets interesting.
Yeah.
They say to use the background removal tool
Oh, really?
to isolate your subject.
So you're not stuck with whatever was behind you in the original photo.
Exactly. Yeah, you're not stuck with that background anymore.
I like that.
So it gives you like a clean slate to work with,
Yeah.
and then you can control the focus.
Mhm.
So you're really setting the stage for your thumbnail.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And speaking of stages, they suggest like playing around with different backgrounds.
Okay.
So, you could download something like a gradient background.
Oh, yeah, like a blend of colors.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Or you could even use a photo of your own workspace, like whatever you want.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so instead of just having like a plain background, it
Mhm.
could be something that kind of hints at the content of your video.
Yeah, so like if your video is about cooking, you could use a picture of your kitchen.
Exactly. Exactly. It gives it a little more visual interest,
Yeah.
and it gives the viewer a little sneak peek.
Hmm.
Now, another thing they emphasize is using filters
Okay.
to enhance your image.
Right.
So CapCut lets you adjust, like the brightness, the contrast, the sharpness.
Oh, so like pretty standard editing stuff.
Yeah, pretty standard stuff.
Even if you've never used CapCut, you've probably seen these options.
Exactly. But even those small adjustments
Mhm.
can make a big difference.
Yeah, just make it look a little bit more polished.
Yes.
Exactly.
Right.
More eye-catching.
It's like fine-tuning a musical instrument.
Oh, I like that analogy.
You're just making these subtle adjustments
Yeah.
to create a more harmonious, visual. All right, so we've got good lighting.
Yep.
We've got a clean background,
Mm-hmm.
some subtle filter work.
Cool. What's next?
Well, to give your thumbnail like some extra depth,
Okay.
they suggest adding a shadow effect.
A shadow effect. Okay.
Yeah. And the technique is actually pretty simple.
Okay.
You duplicate the layer of your subject,
Okay.
change that duplicate to black, and then you just position it behind the original
Okay.
as a shadow.
So wait, hold on.
Yeah.
For someone who's never worked with layers before,
Right.
can you break that down a little bit?
Sure. So imagine you have like 2 sheets of transparent paper.
Okay.
On one, you draw your subject.
Okay.
That's like your main layer.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on the second sheet,
Okay.
you create like a black silhouette of your subject.
Right.
That's your shadow layer.
All right. Placing that shadow layer behind the main layer and slightly offsetting it, you create that illusion of depth.
Oh, okay, so it's not like an actual shadow. It's
Right.
more like a visual trick
Exactly.
to make the image pop.
Yep.
Okay, I got it.
And you can even adjust, like, the opacity of the shadow layer.
The opacity, what's
So opacity just means, like, how see-through something is.
Okay.
So, like, a lower opacity will make the shadow less intense
Right.
and more realistic.
Okay, so you're not going for like a cartoonish drop shadow.
Right.
You want something more natural.
More natural.
Okay, got it.
Cool.
So now they also point out that you can add elements from your own YouTube channel, like your logo or, screenshots from your videos.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, and you can use CapCut's cropping and layering tools to do this. So it's like you're branding your thumbnail.
Yeah.
It's instantly recognizable as yours.
And it's like visual consistency, right?
It's like, think about big brands.
Mm-hmm.
They use the same colors, the same fonts, the same logos everywhere.
It's like they're building a visual language.
Exactly.
That their audience, like, instantly recognizes.
Exactly.
That's really smart.
Uh-huh.
All right, so we've got our image.
Yep.
We've got our background, maybe some extra elements.
Okay.
What about text?
Ah, yes, of course.
Gotta have text.
No thumbnail is complete without text.
Haha, right.
Yeah.
So they say CapCut has a bunch of free fonts and styles.
They encourage you to just experiment and see what you like.
So it's not just like slapping any old text on there.
Okay.
The font choice actually matters.
It does. Yeah, different fonts convey different moods and messages. Like a playful, rounded font might be great for like a funny video.
Yeah.
But if you're making like a serious documentary, you might want something like bolder.
Right.
More authoritative.
It's like choosing the right outfit for an occasion.
Exactly. You're not going to wear a ball gown to a barbecue.
Right, exactly.
Got to match the style to the content.
Yep.
All right, I love that it's all about those like subtle choices that create like a cohesive look. Now, for an extra touch, they suggest downloading PNG shadow images from Google.
Oh, okay.
And adding those behind your text or photo.
PNG shadow images. Now, what are those exactly?
So PNG is a type of image file that supports transparency, which means like you can see through parts of it. So a PNG shadow image is basically a pre-made shadow.
Okay.
That you can just add to your thumbnail to create that 3D look.
Gotcha.
It's like a shortcut.
Yeah.
Creating those cool shadow effects
right.
without having to like do all the layer manipulation.
Exactly. A good way to streamline things.
Yeah.
And just add some extra polish.
All right. So speaking of polish, our thumbnail's looking amazing.
Awesome.
How do we get it out of CapCut and onto YouTube?
All right. Well, here's where it gets a little tricky.
Oh.
CapCut might not actually let you directly export an image.
Oh, really?
If you're using the free version.
Oh.
But don't worry, there's a workaround.
Okay.
They suggest downloading your thumbnail as a video file.
As a video file?
Yeah.
But it's a still image.
I know, but it's all about quality.
Okay.
So choosing a video format rather than something like a GIF.
Okay.
Make sure that you're, preserving the details.
Right.
Getting the highest possible resolution.
So it's like a temporary step.
Right.
To maintain that quality.
Exactly.
Before converting it back to an image.
Exactly.
Okay, that's clever.
Yeah. So once you've downloaded that video file, you can just take a screenshot of it.
Oh, okay.
To capture the thumbnail as a still image.
That's pretty smart.
Yeah. It's an extra step, but it's worth it.
Right.
To make sure your thumbnail looks its best.
And honestly, the fact that you can do all of this with just one app on your phone.
I know, right?
That's pretty mind-blowing.
It's amazing how accessible these tools have become.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
No, they do acknowledge that a phone-made thumbnail might not be, quite as high quality as one made on a computer with, like, professional software.
Right.
But for beginners, especially those who are already comfortable using apps like Canva, this is a fantastic option.
It is. It's a great starting point.
Yeah, and honestly, with a little practice and attention to detail, you can create some really impressive thumbnails.
You can, absolutely.
You're just using your phone.
Yeah.
It's all about like focusing on those fundamentals, good lighting, thoughtful composition, and like a clear understanding of your message.
It's not about the tools, it's about the vision.
Exactly.
The execution.
It's so exciting because it means that like anyone with a smartphone and a bit of creativity can create visuals that like rival professionally designed thumbnails. It's like, it's democratizing design.
I love that.
It really is.
Yeah.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
But we're not done yet.
Oh.
Stay tuned, because after a quick break, we'll be back to discuss, what makes a thumbnail truly stand out, how to capture that viewer's attention, and keep those clicks coming.
Let's do it.
Okay, so we've got the technical stuff down, the how-to.
Right.
But what I think is even more interesting is, the strategy behind a great thumbnail. It's not just about looking good.
Right. It's got to have a purpose.
Yeah.
Think of it this way. Your thumbnail is like a mini movie poster.
Oh, yeah.
It's that first impression, the hook,
right,
that grabs a viewer's attention when they're scrolling through a sea of videos.
So it's got to be eye-catching,
yeah,
but also tell a story even in just one image.
Exactly. It needs to create curiosity.
Okay.
Make them wonder, what is this video about?
Right, make them want to click play. Okay, so how do we do that? What makes a thumbnail truly stand out?
Well, there are a few things to consider.
Okay.
First, think about emotions.
Emotions, okay.
What feeling do you want to evoke in your viewers?
Okay.
Excitement, intrigue, humor.
So, if my video is a funny one, I might want my thumbnail to have, a more playful vibe.
Exactly, like a smiling face, bright colors, maybe a funny pose. Those can all convey a sense of humor.
Gotcha.
On the other hand, if your video is more serious or suspenseful, you might use darker colors.
Okay.
A more intense expression.
Yeah.
Maybe even some visual elements that hint at, the mystery or the drama.
So you're, setting the tone with the visual.
Right, exactly. And then there's composition.
Composition, okay.
How you arrange the elements in your thumbnail can make a big difference. For example, using leading lines like arrows or pointing gestures can draw the viewer's eye toward the most important part of the image.
Yeah. So you're saying it's not just about, randomly placing things?
No, not at all.
It's about thinking about how they guide the viewer's attention.
Absolutely. It's all about visual storytelling.
I like that.
And don't underestimate the power of white space, too.
White space.
Yeah. That's the empty space around the elements in your thumbnail.
So, not cramming everything in.
Exactly. White space gives your thumbnail room to breathe.
Okay.
Makes it easier on the eye.
Right.
And it helps those key elements stand out even more.
Okay, so we've got emotions, composition, white space. Anything else we need to keep in mind?
Well, one thing the tutorial doesn't explicitly mention, but I think is crucial, is understanding your target audience.
Oh, right, because what appeals to one group of people might not work for another.
Exactly. So, for example, if you're making videos for kids, you might use brighter colors, cartoonish characters, a more playful font.
Right.
But if your audience is adults interested in, say, finance or technology, you'd probably go for a more sophisticated, clean look.
It's about speaking their visual language.
Exactly.
Knowing what kind of imagery they're going to connect with.
Exactly. And it's not just about aesthetics either.
Okay.
Think about the information your audience is looking for.
Right.
If they're looking for quick, practical tips, your thumbnail should convey that.
Okay.
Maybe use text that highlights a key takeaway.
Right.
Or a number, like 5 tips to, or the secret to.
So it's like a little mini promise of what they'll get in the video.
Exactly. You're piquing their curiosity, giving them a reason to click.
This is all great stuff.
Thanks.
So to recap, for our listeners who are ready to create their own phone-made thumbnails, what are some key takeaways?
Well, first and foremost, don't be afraid to experiment.
Experiment.
Play around with different backgrounds, fonts, layouts. See what works for you. It's all about finding your own style.
I love that. Embrace that creative freedom.
Exactly. And remember, good lighting is still your best friend.
Oh, yeah, even on your phone.
Even on your phone. Find a well-lit spot. Use natural light if you can. Avoid harsh shadows.
We talked about that earlier, but it's worth repeating.
It is. It's so important.
Because it's that important.
Absolutely. And then remember those simple techniques.
Okay.
That can make a big difference. Like using shadows, layering to add depth.
Yeah, those little details, they really elevate a thumbnail.
They do. They can take it from good to great.
Right. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, always keep your audience in mind.
Yes.
Who are you making this thumbnail for? What's going to catch their eye? Make them want to learn more.
It all comes back to that connection with your viewers.
Exactly.
So think about those emotions you want to evoke.
Okay.
Those visual cues that tell a story, and those design choices that speak to your target audience.
I'm so inspired. I feel like I could go create a bunch of thumbnails right now.
That's the spirit.
And, the best part is there's no right or wrong answer here.
That's true.
It's about finding what works for you.
Yep.
And your content.
And your audience.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive.
It has.
I'm honestly blown away by how much we can do with just our phones these days.
I know. It's amazing how much creative power we have at our fingertips.
And who knows, maybe one day we'll be doing a deep dive on one of our listeners' amazing YouTube channels.
Ooh, that'd be awesome.
But before you go off and create your thumbnail masterpieces,
right.
we do have one final thought to leave you with.
Okay, I'm listening.
Sometimes the most effective designs are the simplest.
Ooh, that's a good one.
We've covered a ton of tips and tricks for making thumbnails on our phones.
We have.
But one thing that's really standing out to me is just how much psychology is involved in a good thumbnail.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not just about making it look pretty.
It's about understanding how people see things.
Right, and how they react to those visuals.
Exactly.
We've talked about, emotions, composition, white space. All these things play into how a viewer sees your thumbnail, even if they don't realize it.
It's true. You don't consciously think, oh, this thumbnail uses the rule of thirds.
Right.
So I'm going to click on it.
Right, but it just feels better.
It feels more appealing.
Yeah.
It just draws you in.
Our brains are just wired to respond to certain visual cues.
They are. Things like symmetry, contrast, visual hierarchy.
Right.
All these things play a role in grabbing our attention.
So even if you're not a professional designer,
right,
just understanding a little bit about these principles can make a big difference.
It can. It's like knowing a few basic cooking techniques.
Oh, okay.
You might not be a chef, but you can still whip up a delicious meal.
And just like in cooking, sometimes the simplest recipes are the best.
They are, absolutely.
We talked about less is more earlier. And I think that's really important to remember.
Especially when you're starting out.
Yeah.
It's easy to get overwhelmed.
Right. You want to use all the bells and whistles.
Exactly. All the cool effects and features.
But sometimes a clean, simple design with a clear message, that's the most effective. So it's not about showing off how many editing tricks,
Right.
It's about communicating your video's essence in the most impactful way.
Exactly. And remember, your thumbnail has a job to do.
What's that?
Convince people to click on your video.
It's like a little salesperson.
It is. It's your content's best advocate.
So you got to think about what's going to make your video irresistible. Like what question will pique their curiosity?
Yeah, what benefit will they get from watching?
And convey that message visually.
Exactly.
All right, so as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought.
All right, shoot.
Creating thumbnails, like any creative process, it's a journey.
It is.
It's about experimenting, learning, finding what works for you.
Finding your style.
And don't get discouraged if your first few thumbnails aren't masterpieces.
Oh, yeah, it takes time.
It takes practice.
Just like anything.
And most importantly, have fun with it.
Yes, absolutely.
This is your chance to express your creativity, try new things.
See what works.
So go out there and create some awesome thumbnails.
We can't wait to see what you come up with.
That's it for this episode of The Deep Dive.
Hope you enjoyed it.
We hope you enjoyed this exploration into the world of YouTube thumbnails.
And remember, keep learning, keep creating,
and keep diving deep.